What a privilege to be able to share the word of God with you this morning. Holy Week is always a hard week to sit with, leading up to Good Friday. I find it such a raw and emotional week for myself, particularly as I try and just really engage with Jesus and what he did for me and for you. I was trying to think if I've ever missed a Good Friday service in my life, and I don't think I have in my 46 years of living. Maybe one, I don't know, but I have done, as far as I know, 46 of these services of my life. And every year, it becomes more raw and more real for me and more tender. And I've learned to sit with the polar opposites of emotions that you can feel in one moment of complete and utter grief that someone had to go through that at the expense of me, and complete and utter gratitude all at the same time. I normally listen through the Bible. It's one of the things that I do in a year. And I start with the Gospels every year, which means by the time we get to Good Friday, I've listened through the life of Jesus, his death, his resurrection, and his ascension at least twice by this time of the year. I'm now in Luke, so I'm listening to it a third time. And I find every year God highlights something different, or a different personality, or a different person for me. And I felt this year he highlighted the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the religious leaders of the day. These God-fearing men, the ones that people took seriously, to know about God and his word and insights. And these holy, righteous men come to this unrighteous decision where firstly they find Jesus guilty before their religious leaders, but then they can't kill him. They need to convince Rome that this man is a threat. And they go to those lengths. This man is such a threat that he must be executed. And to make that even worse, they get this innocent man to be crucified, to let a convicted murderer awaiting his death, to let him go. And my heart asked the question, what is in the hearts of godly men to do such an ungodly, sinful thing? What drives you to a place of murdering an innocent person? So that the one that is guilty can go free. As a staff, we've been going through the doctrine of man. And one of the things that Grudem looks into quite specifically in the doctrine of man is sin. And he makes this point, it was so profound for me, that sin is ultimately completely irrational. He says, finally, we should note that all sin is ultimately irrational. It really did not make sense for Satan to rebel against God in the expectation of being able to exalt himself above God. Nor did it make sense for Adam and Eve to think that there could be any gain in disobeying the words of the Creator. These were foolish choices. The persistence of Satan in rebelling against God even today is still a foolish choice, as is the decision on the part of any human being to continue in a state of rebellion against God. It is not the wise man, but the fool who says in his heart there is no God. Though people sometimes persuade themselves that they have a good reason for sinning, when examined in the cold light of truth on the last day, it will be seen in every case that sin ultimately just does not make sense. You see, when we sober-mindedly sit with what these men did, it's quite irrational, right? To bring a man that is innocent to his death, to let a guilty man go free. So the question I felt that God was posing to us today is, what is in the hearts of these religious leaders that they will choose a death so horrifying for an innocent man? So this morning, I'm hoping to take you on a journey to allow all of us to recognize how we stand as guilty as these men of choosing our Barabbas to go free, to silence the voice of Jesus and his ways in the process. So being who I am, God speaks to me in weird and wonderful ways. And I felt God ask me, when have you been at your most vulnerable, like where you can really put your heart out, where you felt you've really shown your heart? And when I had to think about it, it was at a time, or at the times where I've written down what was in my heart. So if I really want Johan to know how I feel, I don't always have the words in the moment. But when I start penning it down in a letter, and I make the hearts, and I, do all the things. I don't know about you, but I've never written something and just closed it. I always go back and read what I've written. And have you ever read what you've written and you think, oh my gosh, that's quite profound? Is that exactly, did that just come from my being? Is that where I am? There is nothing that exposes your heart like actually writing it down. One of our kids wrote something on a piece of paper, and one of our other kids found it in the car the other day, and she opened it to read it, and the person who wrote it grabbed it and said, no, you can't read that, it's private, because it's a vulnerable space when you start penning something down. So what I felt God asked me to do this morning is take us on a bit of an imaginary journey of one of these religious leaders that have watched Jesus over the last 3 years. And he is writing to one of his very trusted friends. I know it's hard for us to use our imaginations. It's something that we did last in the 1990s. But can I ask you to just engage your imagination this morning? And allow yourself to hear the heart of this man as he writes these letters to his trusted friend in confidence. So before I start, my disclaimer is this. I'm not going to quote scriptures as I read the letters because I want to take us on a journey, but there's a lot of scripture in here. If you want the scripture verses and the references, I can send them to you. Please come and ask me for them if you feel this is not biblical enough for you. But this is how I felt God say I needed to do this morning, so I'm just going to obey him. So my beloved son has put it on there for us. This is the first letter that this man writes. To my trusted friend, peace be upon you. I write to you again about this man, Jesus of Nazareth. You have heard me mention him before, but something has shifted. And I feel compelled to speak more openly than I have until now. I ask you, please keep this in confidence. Even writing these words feels like a risk to my standing. At first, we did not concern ourselves with him. Many teachers come and go, but this one is different. He speaks as though authority belongs to him. Not something learned, but something he carries. The people hang on his words. And what troubles me most is that they believe him. He does not simply teach, he unsettles everything. He heals on the Sabbath, as though the law bends around him. He sits with sinners, eats with those we avoid. And when he speaks of God, it is not as we do. It is as though he knows him personally, calling him Father. And then, this is what I cannot reconcile. He forgives sins. Who can forgive sins but God alone? Do you see why this troubles us? If we let this continue, everything begins to shift. Our authority weakens. The law is reinterpreted. The order we have worked so hard to preserve begins to unravel. And beyond that, there is a greater fear. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation. This is what we say to one another, that we are protecting the nation, that we are preserving what matters. But I must tell you something I have not said aloud to anyone. When he speaks, it is not only our system he challenges, it is me. There are moments when I feel as though he sees straight through me, not just what I say, but why I say it. And I find something rising in me that I do not like to admit. Not only concern, but anger, because he threatens what we have built. But more than that, he exposes what we have become. We have begun to agree among ourselves that something must be done. We say it is for the sake of the people, for the sake of order, for the sake of God. But in quieter moments, I wonder if it is also because I am not sure I want him to be right. Yours in growing unease. As we reflect on this letter, we have to ask the question, why murder? Anything I've ever watched on TV where murder is involved, once they start investigating it and they get to the end of it, someone was either threatened or something of them was going to be exposed. And they had to silence the thing that was going to expose the truth about them. I feel the question that we have to sit with today is, what does Jesus threaten? He threatened their control, authority, and their structure. Yes, that is true. The things they had worked so hard to build and do. But the thing that he exposes is that everything that they believed they are, they might not be. Everything that they've become might be false. So as we sit at the foot of the cross of Jesus, the question that begs an answer is this: what in me feels threatened by Jesus, and what is he exposing in me? We fast forward a little bit, and this friend writes to his friend again. My dear friend, it is done. At least that is what I keep telling myself. I have repeated those words throughout the day, hoping they might bring some sense of rest, but they do not. The matter of Jesus of Nazareth has reached its conclusion. Outwardly, everything has unfolded as we intended. We brought him before the governor, but it was not as straightforward as I had convinced myself it would be. Pilate found no fault in him. And when he said it, something in me hesitated, because I knew it was true. His innocence was not hidden. It was unmistakable. And yet we continued. We pressed harder. We stirred the crowd, guided their voices. We framed the charge carefully. He claims to be king. That was enough. Rome could not ignore it, and neither, if I'm honest, could we afford to. But the moment everything turned was Barabbas, a murderer, a rebel, a man clearly guilty, and yet in that moment, he became useful to us. Pilate offered the people a choice, and we guided them. I wish I could say there was hesitation, but there was none. The people were already disappointed. Jesus had not delivered what they had hoped for. So when the moment came, they chose Barabbas and then crucify him. I can still hear it, and in that moment, everything we feared losing felt secure again. Our position, our influence, our place. And I expected relief. I told myself I felt it. But I need to speak honestly with someone who knows me, because I cannot say this amongst others. Something is unsettled within me. When he stood before us, he did not defend himself, not once. When accused, he remained silent, not broken, not afraid. There was a stillness in him, a kind of certainty. It was as though he was not being overcome, but was allowing it. And that thought has followed me all day. If we were guilty, surely something would have broken in him. If he were false, surely he would have fought. But there was nothing. And now I find myself asking something I do not want to face. Did we choose Barabbas because he was guilty or because he was easier? Easier to understand, easier to manage, easier to live with. Because he did not confront us the way Jesus did. I have told myself this was necessary, that we acted for the good of the people. But in the quiet, I wonder if we were simply protecting ourselves. So I return to what I know, what I've decided. It is finished, but I am no longer certain. Yours in confidence and in growing unease. The heart of this letter shows us that this man and these leaders had a choice. And then when we choose wrong, it will leave us unsettled. The death of Jesus meant for them to silence him and to settle them. You see, our sinful, irrational choices to silence Jesus will leave him silenced, if that is what you choose. But it will still leave you unsettled. The one thing it will not silence is who he is and the truth that he presents to you today. You can cut him out of your life if you choose to do so. But your life will always beg to ask the question, am I choosing Barabbas because he is the right choice or the easy one? The lie we believe in choosing Barabbas is that he is the safer choice, our cop-out, our quick fix to our lives and how we are steering it. But the reality is we will always be looking over our shoulder. Because the truth is, Barabbas is a murderer. So the question lies with us, what or who is your Barabbas that you are choosing over Jesus? We fast forward to after the death of Jesus and the final letter that this man writes to his friend. My friend, I have tried not to write again. I thought if I keep silent, perhaps the weight of what has happened would lessen. But it has not. It has only grown heavier. I'm no longer wrestling with what we did. I'm wrestling with what it means. When he died, something changed. Not just around me, but within me. You know the signs that were spoken of, the darkness, the trembling earth, the torn veil. I cannot fully explain them, but I cannot ignore them either. And yet it is not those things that have undone me most. It is him, the way he died. I have seen many men face death. Some curse, some beg, some cling to life. He did none of these. There was suffering, yes, but there was also something else, a willingness, as though he was not caught in it, but was giving himself to it. And then those words, Father, forgive them. I have tried to forget them, but I cannot. Forgive them for what we had just done, for what I had just done. My friend, no man speaks like that in such a moment. And I am beginning to see what I refused to see before. We did not destroy him. He gave himself. And if that is true, then everything changes. Because it means the cross was not our victory, it was his purpose. And I began to understand something that unsettles me even more. Barabbas walked free because Jesus took his place, and I am no different. At the time, it felt like a decision we controlled. Now it feels like something far greater, as though we stood in the middle of something we did not understand and chose without seeing. And I cannot escape this truth. It was not that I could not see, it was that I did not want to surrender. That is what breaks me now, because I see him differently. Not as a threat, but as the one who gave himself, even for those who rejected him, even for me. I do not yet understand how such mercy could be possible, but I know this: I cannot return to who I was. And for the first time, I am no longer trying to defend myself. I am asking if there is still mercy for a man like me. No longer certain, but beginning to see. This last letter shows us that the irrational sin choices that these men made to kill Jesus and to silence him, to get rid of him once and for all, this death that they planned becomes the very thing that offers them a way to salvation. Not because they chose it, but ultimately because he chose it. The plan was to silence his authority, but he establishes his authority by choosing his own death, even before they plotted to kill him. If Jesus did not choose the cross to become fully God, fully man, and to pay the price for my sinful choices, his death would have been like any other, a threat that has been silenced. But Jesus chooses the cross, and he chooses to take the place of Barabbas so he could go free. And suddenly we stand in front of the stark reality that Barabbas is not our way out anymore, but he becomes the mirror of who we are. He becomes us. And we become him. We need to be set free at the cross of Jesus and the work that he did for us. Barabbas going free was Jesus' plan before he was their plan. So the question we have to sit with here is, can we surrender to his choice of taking our place so that we can go free? Romans 5 verse 8 says this: but God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, choosing our cop-outs, choosing our own ways, while we were still sinners, Christ died for our sin.